think we're live on YouTube.
We're not on Podbean yet, right?
No.
Okay.
Says we are.
Can anybody see the feed?
Zach, are you watching YouTube?
I can do that, sure thing.
Yeah, we're live. Two minutes to live on Podbean.
How come I've got a microphone not zero?
That's an old one. Yeah. Okay, switching camera view. Yeah, that angle sucks. It's a brand new camera. That doesn't work very well.
Oh, gosh.
There we go.
Thank you. Oh, let me get Podbean up.
1 minute warning on Podbean. 30 seconds, I'll take the music up. We didn't even talk about who's going to do any of this. He's gonna wing it, huh? Is Jim on?
I'm doing 11:35.
You're doing 11:35? Okay, well, congratulations.
Yes. So you don't have Podbean up yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Coming up. We got
As soon
25
as that
seconds.
one on the
Oh,
bottom
yeah,
is
no, I'm
running.
sorry. Yeah, it's not on yet.
Okay.
That's why you're not getting it.
Yeah, I know, but I've got that one on the bottom. I've never had that before. I tried to get rid of it, but hopefully I'll get the new one when it
No
comes up.
problem. 15 seconds. Oh, man. Podbean's going live right now. We are live. We are live on all feeds, but we have no listeners. Looks like Jenna is hiding from us today.
Is she on?
Yeah, she's on.
just.
I'm about to take her lead.
You heard about the cashews, right?
Nope.
Like 4 minutes.
Where's the script?
Sorry.
I have to ask for it every day.
Yeah, but I sent it to you at the same time I sent it to Lori. Do you need it again,
Oh,
Lori? Do you have it? Or because I'm going to have to delete you and then add you again.
I can send it to her. Well, I don't.
No, it has to come out of here.
Don't worry, I'll wing it. I'll wing it. No big deal. It's not like I wrote anything up.
For our audience, which is 2 people right now,
Yeah, where'd Judy go?
we are just sending Lori the script so she knows what she's going to talk about tonight.
So you think.
On its way.
Thank you.
I feel like we're all pros at this now. The podcast is easy compared to running a conference. Want some real good feedback during that. Thoughts on post-COVID-19, just a little bit more lighthearted or good news type. We're at 2 minutes. This is a 2-minute warning. This is John Goehle with the ASC podcast with John Goehle. We're about a minute and 45 seconds before we go live. I mean, before we start.
We are live.
We're already live.
Start
yeah.
talking.
Before we start talking. Brian Dennehy just died.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I liked him.
81 years old.
Oh, the actor?
Yeah.
Oh, I did like him too. He's a
Who?
rough guy.
Who is this?
Brian Dennehy?
Oh, I like him.
I did
Like
too. Do too.
him.
Whatever. Yeah.
1 minute warning. We're at 20 seconds. Music's going up.
That kind of different than you do. Welcome to episode 102 of the ASC podcast with John Goehle for April 16th, 2020. We're recording live from our studios in Spencerport, New York. We would like to thank our sponsors, Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, Surgical Information Systems, Encompass Healthcare Data Solutions, BHG Patient Lending, and Medicus IT. For more information about our sponsors, please visit our website. This is Susan Cronkite, Chief Researcher for the ASC Podcast with John Goehle and Senior Nurse Consultant for Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies. Joining me from our studio in Spencerport is John Goehle, recognized as one of the nation's leading experts in the ambulatory surgery industry. Also joining us remotely from Rochester, New York, Jenna Alvarez, Senior Nurse Consultant with AHS, Alex Borneman, Director of Operations with AHS, Judy D'Ambrosio, Director of Educational Services with AHS, and from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Lori Rodericks, Director of Clinical Service for AHS. From Atlanta, Georgia, Zach Kelleridis, Financial Consultant with AHS. From West Palm Beach, Florida, Ann Geyer, Chief Nursing Officer with SIS. From West Palm Beach, Florida. Oh,
I sorry. Jim's not
It's only
joining me.
one of me.
I got rid of it quickly.
he
there.
jumped in because we can all control the
Yeah.
thing at the same time, and he just
Sorry
sneaks
about
in there
that.
and moves things around on me. Anyway,
And actually,
welcome,
Jim isn't down
everybody.
there, and even if he was joining us today, he's back in Rochester. So.
yes.
Right now, we're all very envious of Ann Geyer. Of course, she's being very gracious and not showing the outside.
No.
We all
We
have
had a
snow.
little bit of rain today for the first time. We haven't had rain in a month. We had a little bit of rain. I was hoping it would be a soaker, but it wasn't. But it's 80-something degrees.
Oh, we've had snow.
Yeah.
I know.
The puppy's enjoying licking the tops of the plants now. That's her new thing.
Yeah.
So we're coming off of a very successful first day of our virtual conference. It's a New World Conference 2020, a conference for ambulatory surgery centers, virtual conference for ambulatory surgery centers, and of course, we have the second day tomorrow, starting at 8:00. So I know many of our listeners are already signed up, and we appreciate that. It is still not too late to sign up. We'll tell you more about that at the end here, but definitely, if you go to our website at ascpodcast.com while we're talking here and sign up, you'll still be able to get in live. And if you do sign up for both days of the conference, you'll get a recording of Tuesday. And that is available now. I did upload that a couple hours ago. So it's been more than a week, believe it or not, since we've talked live on a podcast here. So a number of things have happened, but in reality, things have kind of slowed down a little bit here. And I hope everybody is taking advantage of some, their educational opportunities. Certainly those that we offer. There's many other organizations that are doing that. Also, and keeping a very close eye on the ASC Association website. I'm going to have an announcement about that in a few minutes. Actually, I'll do that right now. So ASCA 2020 has transitioned into a virtual conference and expo. Out of concern for the health and safety of all the attendees amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the ASCA 2020 Conference and Expo is transitioning to a virtual event. The 2020 virtual conference is scheduled for July 9th and 10th and will offer the same top quality education, networking, and resources as ASCA's in-person events, all from the safety and comfort of your home or office. And during the exciting virtual event, you can participate in live interactive breakout sessions led by industry experts, hear from inspiring featured speakers like Ann and myself, watch recordings of other sessions presented during the conference, explore the virtual expo hall where you can schedule one-on-one meetings with exhibitors and discover the latest technologies, products, and services. Connect digitally with your peers to network, share ideas, and discuss best practices. That's going to be interesting. I'm kind of curious as to how they do that. And additional details, including an updated event agenda, will be available soon. So I did talk to the conference organizers. Lori, have you talked to them yet? I know, Ann, you didn't get the call yet, but.
No.
No. As not being a speaker, they have like the education committee on hold right now.
Yeah.
So.
Because Lori moderates virtually all the sessions there, it seems. So, whoop, she just froze on us.
Really froze.
But I did talk to them today. They were working on recording most of the sessions, and then we'll be there live to answer questions. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, we'll all be back to normal.
Sorry, my internet just went in and out.
Yep. Yeah, you're still a little
very echoey sounding.
Little tight right now there.
Very robot sounding.
I wonder if she's doing that on purpose.
Trying to get out of her session.
Yeah, that's right. It's like those people that pretend to be an answering machine, right?
I can't hear you.
Well, hopefully Lori will be back. Not a good transition, but I did want to, on a sad note, very, very dear friend of the industry and a very dear friend of mine, Tom Salamone, who was a life safety expert, life safety and OSHA expert, spoke quite a bit at the New York State Association meetings and was very much involved with the FGI, not FGI, NFPA guideline creation and monitoring. And a very, very dear man who spent a lot of time helping our industry make sure that we were always on top of things. Tom, after every conference, everybody would say that he was a great speaker, but they didn't like anything he had to tell them.
Yeah, they don't like that bad news.
And he passed away last week. We don't actually know why. He wasn't in the best of health, and we're not sure what it is. I don't want to make any suppositions, but he will be sadly missed by all of us in the industry, and a big loss here. And so our hearts are with Tom's family as they go through this difficult time, obviously. So when Sue and I were talking about what we wanted to talk about today, we thought we talk about so many of the difficult things that go on and some of the challenges that we're facing here. And I thought that we would just reflect before we go into some more detail on what is happening right now, on some of the things that we've learned or that we've seen post-COVID. So I asked all of our participants here just to kind of make some thoughts. And Sue, why don't you just kick it off since you wrote a bunch of notes on this?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how things, good and bad, but just how everything's going to be so different as we come out of this. I mean, I think some things will go back to normal, but so many of us have, we've been working from home. We've been using Zoom to connect with family and with our, work associates. And I have a feeling that's probably going to continue to some extent, which, on the one hand, it's kind of sad because we won't necessarily get together as much for things. But I think with family things, I'm looking forward to staying more closely in touch with relatives that are, out of the area. And, so I think that can be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, both of our families, we have weekly get-togethers with our respective families where we
several times a week.
Well, yeah, mine only does it once a week. Sue's
Between the grandkids, my mom,
Yeah.
my sister and brother, and
that's more than you really. I mean, you would talk to
It's
them
more than I would-
individually, but
yeah,
but all of
definitely
them
didn't
together.
see him that often.
Yeah,
as
Well, and
often.
John, most of yours is actually on this podcast now.
That's true. So we basically do it all day long.
Yeah, he's just
well,
and I think, and we've become so much more self-sufficient. We've been talking about this, how, we're cooking more, we're spending more time doing things like playing board games, obviously checking up on our family, playing with our puppy.
That's right.
I started doing some yard work. So it's like what Ann talked about the other day is, doing some things that, are taking care of ourselves, like getting outside a little bit more. I think some of that, again, we're all going to go back to restaurants and everything, but maybe we'll keep doing some more home cooking and, I think everybody's life is still going to change.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, we're working our way through our freezer. I mean, you know how you go to the grocery store and you come home with fresh meat and your freezer's full of meat.
Yeah.
So now we're working our way through it. The problem is it tends to be the same food all the time. So now you have to go look and find new recipes to cook. Yeah. And our newspaper, if you are a subscriber, has sent out or published a virtual cookbook of desserts of all things that you can print. Of course, I printed all 42 pages of them. But no, I mean, it's just, and for us, it's year round growing here for gardening and all, but a lot of the garden centers are closed. Yeah. And then in Michigan, part of the protest that they're doing in Lansing has to do that you can't buy seed, you can't buy grass, grass, the sod grass, not the, because you can buy marijuana, but you can't buy seeds to plant a garden. And people are having a fit. I mean, because they're home and they want to plant their garden and they can't.
I know. I did make a list, like you talked about the other day, of things to get done during this time. So I was actually just before this out there doing a little bit of cleaning in the garage and things. But I was thinking about, there's this planter that I've had forever. I haven't put it together that has space for a bunch of different herbs. But I was wondering if I would be able to get the plants to put into it. So I'll have to look into that.
People are going online, Sue, to get their plants. Because if you can't get them, Wildflower Farms is a farm out of Georgia, but if you go online, you can order a lot of them and ship for your planting zone. But I love walking through nurseries. I just love doing that. And now you can't do it.
I know.
My other thought was,
and we've got.
Go ahead.
You can get some from like Home Depot, especially seeds.
I was wondering if they were still open.
Not to mention, we have a lot of seeds. I may have planted too many herbs.
I might you can leave them on your doorstep.
There you go.
Pop over and get.
Okay, now this is an aside. Do y'all know what sugar bomb cherry tomatoes are?
Absolutely.
They're the sweetest. They are the sweetest little cherry tomatoes. So we can't get them all the time. I mean, I'd eat them for dessert. But so I said to Carl one day, why don't we plant some? He said, they'll never grow. I said, just stick them in some good soil. They grew. But they're not as sweet when you get what grows wasn't as sweet, but
Yeah.
we at least had little, and our farmers here are having to throw food into cow pastures to let the animals eat tons of tomatoes and melons because the restaurants are closed.
Yeah.
So where they were selling to all the restaurants, now they don't have buyers, and all this food's having to be thrown out.
I saw that. I wondered why they couldn't donate it all to like Food Link or something. Because a lot of the local.
They're
farms-
trying to donate. Yeah, they're trying to donate, but then they got, how are you going to do it? Who's going to pick it up, and how
Yeah.
much social contact do you need?
truckloads of cabbage. And, But my other, and I guess
Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
We're having some problems with the feed here.
I know.
And your.
I know. I
Wikipedia
just lost.
is
I
frozen.
just.
and I think we
Yep.
lost.
Yep. I just lost the link.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Let me.
It
Lauren,
says it's connecting.
and we can at least still hear you.
Yeah, I've been having
It says it's
horrible problems here.
Okay, so we can hear you at least, Lori. We just can't see you.
Let me. I don't think it's on my side, but keep going while I try
Okay.
to adjust.
So I
the
was
feed
wondering
here.
everybody's thoughts on how this is going to affect ASCs, and my thoughts were, it may be, I don't want to say helpful because none of us wanted to have to go through this, but because they're a more personal, smaller setting, I think as people, miss that personal connection, that could be a helpful thing, and also just the whole infection. They're not going to be exposed to so many people. We know we have good infection control in the ASCs. And you don't have the seriously ill patients. Most people that go there are at least somewhat healthy. So I think it may be a good thing.
There you are, Ann.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more popular as we come back online. Is everybody?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
back on
Okay,
line.
good,
I just
good.
prioritize. I don't. It might be that little.
I
thing.
think
I
a
think
lot
a
of
lot of the comments. Whoops.
goes
Here
my-
goes my.
Just a minute.
A minute.
Now,
Now
I don't.
I don't
I
know
will
why
get
we're getting
feedback.
feedback.
Because your computer's not muted.
It is.
It is so.
We're getting you through the computer as well.
I know.
No,
It shows.
it shows muted.
All right.
All right.
Let me
Let me
hang up.
hang up.
Okay, try again.
Sorry, Ann.
All right. Am I only on the computer
Oh.
now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Oh no.
Oh.
Sorry.
You just gotta
Guess you're
increase the
muted
volume.
probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn up
Can you
any-
hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
Can you hear
Oh,
us?
geez. What's going on today? There are gremlins.
I know.
I think so.
I call
so.
it chipmunks.
Well, I think there's a lot of internet use
Yeah. Yeah.
going on across the nation.
Even with things like Netflix and everybody's watching television because they're home.
Mhm.
Sue was talking about the positive impacts on the one thing I was thinking about too, Sue, is that we spend a lot of time going to board meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to wonder, these live board meetings that we have that are often in the evening after the doctors are all done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I didn't think about this now. Do we really all have to be in the same room at the same time? I think the Zoom sessions, we just lost Lori again, and then she's back. But it just seems to me like there's really no reason why we
Yeah.
can't be doing this from home. We'll probably make
Mhm.
these meetings half the time.
Yeah. Cutting out the travel time.
cutting
People
out the
going in
travel
from
time.
and they can be a bit more relaxed and really focused rather than
Right.
thinking of all the other.
We're also going
things,
to save a lot of paper because we can throw things on the screen. We
Mhm.
can put the agenda up there, show the
Yeah.
the items. So I mean, I'm actually thinking that it could be more useful time. I mean, you can't beat personal interaction, but when you're looking at somebody, as we all are looking at each other right now, it's a lot easier to have a conversation when you see each other's faces than when you're just doing it by a conference call, which I've never liked. So I think Zoom is, well, we probably should be mentioning brand names, but let's face it, this is
Online.
this is what we're all using right now.
Yep.
And for those of you out there in the real world listening to us, that's how we connect each other to our live feeds, both to YouTube and to Podbean.
Mhm.
So I do encourage everybody to start thinking about how they might want to transition their board meetings. I don't know about quality improvement. I think that's one of those things that tends to be, where you bring a bunch of clinicians together and you're not going to want them to be working overtime, off site. But
Yeah.
definitely for
Not to
Q1,
mention there are some privacy concerns with
That's correct.
or with the different platforms.
That voice from nowhere is Jenna. Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks. And just to bring up some good news, I think all of us have noticed how much people have really been stepping up to help each other.
Yeah.
You hear when they've put out calls for masks, and I know they can't make them for healthcare providers, but just for regular people or for people that are in hospice. I saw a call the other day. People are just sewing them at home. We saw something where people are using their home 3D printers to print face shields for people.
So I told you that 3D printer would come in handy someday.
But I don't think that I think
haven't
there's still a
printed
whole
one
lot
yet.
of little figures being printed.
Little game pieces.
And people, standing outside and applauding for healthcare workers and,
Yeah, and the schools, when the teachers drive by their students, these little parades, those are heartwarming.
Yeah. And of course, I think we've mentioned this a couple times, but I was so impressed by how a lot of ASCs offered to help out with the medication when one of the local hospitals was running low. So I think you never know if it's going to bring out the best in people or not, but I think, it has in many ways.
Lori just sent us a chat message saying she's running all over the house to get a better connection.
I wonder, did you see her going?
I know.
It was sort of making me dizzy. We were like going on a little ride with her.
Oh, well. I hope this doesn't happen
Lori.
tomorrow during her presentation.
I know. That's usually we don't have an issue with her connection.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
That's okay.
It's all right. We can hear you fine, though.
I guess that's important.
Anybody have anything else to kind of talk about with the good news? Any good stories out there that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, it's been great for my weight.
Carl told me I was starting to look anorexic. He really did last night. He said, you need to cut it out. Exercise all the time. I mean, if I have a break, I exercise, and it's
Wow.
just to keep from getting bored, and also to, so that it gives me that burst of energy. But he wasn't too happy with that.
I think I kind of go the opposite way.
Yeah, we're the opposite in this house.
I like to eat when I'm bored.
So we really stocked up on some food, but we realized that we also eat the food faster when there's more food.
Oh no!
There's so
Look who just joined me.
Oh, there we
Hi,
go.
baby.
Look at those big eyes.
I know.
again.
I think Tinker knows when her friends are on Zoom. Don't
How
you,
doing,
Tinks?
Tinker?
Don't you, Tinks? Oh. All right, that's your dog dose for the day,
There
everybody.
you go. I was
All
thinking
right.
the other day, we went to Grubhub. We used to use Grubhub an awful lot, and we went, what was it, Good Friday, we ordered out. And it was funny because I kind of said, I said to Sue afterwards, I like the way I cook the steak better than the steak that I bought. And I said that was really kind of a waste of money because I felt like I could have done a better job and it would have been warmer and things like that. So
My chicken French was really good.
that's
though.
true. Yeah, that's hard to make at home.
Yeah.
What is that, Sue?
The chicken French I ordered. Sorry, I was way back from.
Oh.
That was really, really good.
No, well, Carl's an excellent cook, and he doesn't use recipes. He'll start with the recipe, but he can't. His body doesn't, or his mind doesn't let him stick to the recipe.
Gotta tweak it.
And he is really a good cook. So
Lucky.
Yeah, that's my problem too. I'm like, are you sure the recipe's right in this? Maybe we tweak it just a little bit.
Alex, I always tell Carl, cook the recipe first the way the recipe is written. Then the next time you can tweak it. But
Mhm.
Oh, I
I
love
have
mommy.
problems with that.
Tinker likes being on the air here.
she does. Say hi. Say hi.
Hey, Tinker.
Meanwhile, Saxon's outside. So when I let him out, it was a blizzard.
Uh-huh.
Currently, like, it's got to be like 50 out and it's completely sunny. There's no snow
Yeah.
anywhere on the
Oh,
ground.
geez.
Oh,
What
Welcome
is
to
going-
Rochester.
that's Rochester.
Okay, well, I guess we better start talking about business here. So,
Okay. And have we talked about how people can ask questions?
oh, yeah, go
and
ahead.
All that.
Yeah, I didn't.
Sorry.
Yeah, I skipped that.
So if people have questions throughout, you can use the Podbean app, type it into chat. You can email us at comments@ascpodcast.com, or you can do it in the YouTube comments, whichever is easiest for
And,
you.
we don't have a lot of material today. We just want to kind of get you caught up. So any questions out there, feel free to ask them. You've got a panel of the best here well, maybe not Lori, but I wasn't
gonna
quite
say,
sure. I was
I
testing
know.
to see if she heard me.
I was gonna say, if she can't hear you, then that puts a different spin on it. But
My daughter is listening. Thank you so much.
I love you, Lori. So, Alex, we're going to start with you and follow the bouncing ball with the 1135.
Yeah. So we heard from ASCE a few. I think it was early last week. They were starting to recommend that healthcare facilities contact or request a waiver from their regional office, their CMS regional office. But
well, and I guess we need to put that a little bit in perspective, because the waivers that have been requested by the states and have been granted by the government have not been specific to ASCs, and as a result of that,
or even hospitals, as far as whether or not they should continue
certain
their life safety inspections.
Yeah. Good.
And testing inspections. That includes biomedical. Really, it was only the renal dialysis centers that they had talked about. So the ASCE waiver that they put together was very specific to Joint Commission in the hospitals. It actually was talking mostly about the conditions of participation, which is the hospital codes, versus the conditions for participation or for coverage. Thank you, which are for the ASCs. So today we put together a form for you, and I'm sure we're going to put that online for you guys, the ASCs out there, to request an 1135 waiver from CMS if you are no longer doing like certain levels of life safety maintenance. However, we still think that it's in your best interest and in the best interest of your facilities and your patients to continue with those maintenance items that you can during this time. You know, that there's a lot of concern about having a staffing and even the contractors to do the testing and maintenance. So that would be the reasoning behind maybe waiving some of those. But if you find yourselves in that situation where you're unable to continue that, you should put in an 1135 waiver request. And that's actually from communication with HHC as well.
So a couple people who have submitted them after the ASCE thing went out and heard back all got denied.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes. You haven't been reading your emails today.
I've been on phone the whole time. That is interesting. So this is.
We've heard from about 2 centers that have both reported that the requests were denied.
Okay.
Or any? Does anybody know? And does anybody on our feed? So for those, we were not recommending that you submit an 1135 until today. Right. So that's news, Jenna. But we don't know of anybody that's actually had one accepted, right?
Not that I know of.
Okay, and we're watching the chat here to see if anybody says yes. Well, that is interesting. So I guess we.
Yeah, I mean, I would continue. I would customize our form and tell CMS
at least you're putting in the effort and showing that you've made the effort to do the testing. You weren't able to do the testing. You put in the effort to get a waiver.
And to be quite honest, we weren't actually expecting anyone to get a response to these waivers.
Yeah.
So that is actually surprising that they've gone and reviewed them already.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to have to go off script here. At this point, we would recommend perhaps that you still file the 1135 if you're not able to meet all those requirements, but we highly recommend that you do everything in your power to continue meeting the requirements for life safety inspections, testing, etc.
And that includes fire drills again. Fire drills. And again, if you're not on site for the current quarter, you're still going to want to do a fire drill as best you can. We've heard talk of possibly doing remote fire drills, looking at the floor plans. Again, that's not going to meet the requirements, obviously, but that will show an effort, and that's better than nothing.
Like a tabletop fire drill, and definitely you can do the tabletop disaster drills, which are still required, of course, under the code and on most accreditation organizations.
And again, we're in the middle of an actual event that you can use as your disaster drill for either the first quarter or the second quarter. We probably would recommend you use it as the first quarter because that's when it started. But
Alex, we have a question. Kate is wondering, how would you recommend doing a fire drill if you have no staff?
Actually, I think it was more of a, how would you do a fire drill if you don't have any staff?
I was trying to not add the
No, I mean,
sarcastic twist.
But since I'm the sarcastic one here, I kind of agree. But
well, if you have no staff, then you can do it with all the staff that you have. If that's just you,
run around
you can conduct a fire drill with yourself. I mean,
we have one center that there's only 2 people that work there every day of the week. And doctors, and when a doctor comes in, I mean, they're literally only open 3 or 4 days a month, I think it is. So periodically they have to have a fire drill among themselves. So.
The other thing is, when you have your staff back, I would think that it would be better to do 2 fire drills in 1 quarter with actual staff.
Yeah, but don't count it towards the 4.
Right. In other words, don't skip a quarter later on as a result.
But you have a good explanation of why.
Yeah.
I think
and
speaking of survey,
we won't be seeing patients the first day too. So that could be something you put in your plan. They don't take all that long. You could do your fire drill on the full days when you're bringing everybody back as a top priority.
That's a good segue into, though I'm sure there's still some more questions about this, but it's a good segue into the point that we're working on a startup checklist. I've seen the first draft of it, which is excellent. Thank you for my team. And I know, Lori, you kind of started the ball rolling on that, and we got a lot of input from life safety, from the nursing staff, nursing, Judy. It's an incredible effort. We're not ready to roll it out yet, though, right? I think we're still working on.
I think it's going to be Monday that we roll it out.
Okay. So that'll be posted on the website. Alex, the 1135 waiver, did we push that out this morning as part of the?
We did. It was attached.
It was attached to the email?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
if you go to the web, so if you're a AHS client or on our client list, you would have gotten it, but the website doesn't have it. So remind me, and we'll put a link up there later on. And that's a form that you can download. We really recommend that you use that form as opposed to the one that ASHE has published, because the one for ASHE is actually for hospitals.
Maybe that's why it got rejected.
Well, Lori, I was actually thinking that if they didn't modify that substantially, how could you approve it?
Right.
Yeah. So that's a good question. And actually, Jenna, if you can reach out to the client and get a copy of what they submitted, that might help us understand. Maybe we can figure out from there what happened.
Yeah. And I do have another question about fire drills. So if you have staff that's working from home, can you do it as like a Zoom or something tabletop? Would that count at all in this situation where you could just talk through what would happen if we went this way and this was on fire, or that kind of thing in this situation? It wouldn't normally be counted, I'm sure, but.
As a surveyor, I would accept that, if it's written up in a
too.
scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. 3.
You're making a good faith effort to do the best you can do under really hard situations. And it shows your intent, even though you couldn't be together.
And if you really document it well and have a good discussion in there, and take advantage. When I do tabletop disaster drills, I have fun with it. And it's sometimes, it'll be a 30-minute drill as we're walking through a lot of different scenarios. I would do the same thing. You got a little bit of time here. Take advantage of it and walk people through this. They'll be better trained. I agree. I agree thoroughly. Is it for the questions?
Yeah, that was kind of me. Just because it was stupid, I didn't want to claim it in
good.
case you were like, no, that wouldn't work.
No, that's a good question. I think it's an excellent question. Okay. Hang on, sorry. My thing is not scrolling. We did get, so our dear friend George Scoris, who is a pharmacy consultant here in the state of New York, sent us an email. Who wants to talk about this? That's probably better able to talk about this. I'm thinking of Jenna, who's not on the screen. She's ignoring me.
Surprise.
He had reached out to DSCSA regarding making allowances for emergency transfers of medication during issues with drug supply related to COVID-19.
And a little bit of perspective here. We know that there's been quite a bit of requests, at least in New York, and I'm assuming this is happening elsewhere, where hospitals are saying or other healthcare organizations are running out of drugs. That happened in Yonkers, for example. And the state has been facilitating that or helping in that. But the problem, of course, are there are legal problems with transferring especially scheduled drugs between systems. And up until now, it had been a voluntary thing. So this was addressing the issue, what would happen if it's no longer voluntary? I'm sorry, Jenna, to interrupt.
Well, so he got a response. Honestly, it wasn't that helpful, but basically saying that they're aware of the drug supply issues and that they recognize that hospitals and medical facilities are preparing and actively treating for the surge of patients. And that they're actively working to provide more clarity and guidance on the scope of regulatory relief for, medical healthcare facilities and other supply chain stakeholders. So it kind of sounds like they're making the way. They're working on making the way for this to happen. Right. And again, if you had, well, at least in New York, the people who have asked for drugs have gone through the state, and I think it's best probably to let the Department of Health or someone from the state be the one to handle the
transfer.
Yeah, I would recommend
or direct. Direct the transfer.
Yeah, you might want to get the DEA involved for your state or whatever. Or wherever it is that you send your 222 forms.
Yeah, you'd be very careful with any time that you're moving drugs around.
Yeah, especially controlled ones.
Yeah, we do have a link on our website. It's under today's daily client update. If you want to go to our website at ascpodcast.com, and you can see the actual link. There's two there, Jen. What's the second one? Oh, and then there's also a link to the updates. So it's not a bad idea to go to the FDA website every once in a while and just see what where the updates are. That's how we got informed about it. And again, thanks to our friend George Scoris out there, friend of all of ours in the industry here. The governor in New York, and let me get this right. New York, California, Connecticut, Maryland, and Pennsylvania are now mandating or expected to mandate in the next few days the wearing of masks in public by all citizens. So Jenna brought up earlier today what do we do in the situation that a patient walks into the center not wearing a mask? Because technically, I think the rule is you have to send them home, right?
I think that was the rule in California, Lori said.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at Pennsylvania a little closer before this, and it sounds like they're really upholding it for stores.
Okay.
So,
and I know, at the
say that again, Lori.
In Pennsylvania, going into a store, you have to have a mask on.
Okay.
If you don't have a mask on, then the staff in the store are supposed to direct you to leave.
And I think when we say mask in this case, I believe we're actually referring to not necessarily
any face covering.
The face covering.
Face covering. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know at the local hospitals, they started setting up little stations outside of the hospitals that they check everyone for symptoms, but then they also now are handing out masks if you don't have one already.
To go in to the hospital?
To go in, yep. And then, patients, vendors, anyone coming into the center has to wear a mask. or to the hospital.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's something that, depending on what state you're in, where you're listening from, what ends up being mandated by the governor, as to how you're supposed to proceed. And the hardest thing is where many of the ASCs have been closed or on a shorter schedule, they may not have as many supplies as the hospitals, and the hospitals are short. The ASCs would technically be shorter, and to be handing out masks to patients coming in is going to be detrimental to your ability to stay open for any length of time. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, it's probably something that you're going to want to include in your pre-op instructions, is instructing them to wear their own mask to the center.
Yeah, very good point. We'll add that to our list, I'm sure.
And then the other thing is when they do come into your center with their mask on, obviously you want to, hopefully they're wearing it appropriately. But when they come into the clinical area as a patient, then you're going to have to make a decision based on the type of procedures you're doing as to whether or not they're going to maintain that same mask on. A lot of MAC patients or conscious sedation, not heavily medicated, that have their own airways, you might be able to just put your oxygen up underneath their existing mask so that you're not coming in contact with their contaminated inside of the mask. If you are doing general cases, especially now, a lot of the places are doing broken bones, et cetera. So you're putting those patients off to sleep, then be very careful when you remove the mask. I would recommend that someone remove it, obviously with gloves on, put it into a baggie or whatnot for that patient if it's theirs from home. Remove your own glove, remove the gloves that you just used, and then do your hand hygiene. And at the end of the procedure, you would be putting another mask on when the patient is alert enough to be able to breathe on their own. You wouldn't put the mask on them if they're needing assistance with their ventilation. So it's something that you'd have to consider. It would be an opportunity for training. You may want to have one designated person do it, or you may want to have that performed by your anesthesia staff. But go with whoever's going to do it the best possible way in an infection controlled manner. And not every provider is as attuned to proper hand hygiene. Is that polite?
Yeah. Lorian, and I am so tired of talking about N95 masks, but we haven't brought it up like in the last couple of days on the podcast. Can somebody else talk about the whole issue of surgical site infections, surgical suites, and the N95 mask?
Well, the N95 mask is pretty much protecting the wearer from taking in it's such a good particulate filter. So an N95 mask can be worn in the operating room. However, you have to remember that when you're in an operating room, you are now exposing everything to that particular patient's site of surgery. So when you leave an operating room, you are technically supposed to take off all of your contaminated garb, your masks, your gloves, your gowns, whatever. So in that respect, you're going to have to remove your N95 mask, because if you're going on to take care of another patient in the OR in an open, sterile environment, you should not go in there with a contaminated mask.
Right.
If you're in the patient care area, you can keep that mask on all day long because it's not a sterile environment. But once you go into a sterile environment, you have to treat each procedure separately per patient. So a patient can have 12 procedures, but if it's the one into the OR and out of the OR, then you have to remove things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I have literally spent most of the day repeating that same conversation. I can't believe I didn't put it into the script for today. But thank
That's
you.
good, because I'm running around the house. I don't have the script.
You just lost it again. And do you have anything? I know you and I actually were CC'd on a bunch of those emails.
Yeah, asking about that. And I think that the big question is, there was a comment on the virtual, during the virtual conference about using the, was it KN, not whatever mask was, but it's not approved by the FDA. So you have to be really careful where you use it. It doesn't mean you can't use it. And John, you did a great job of replying to that, but there's confusion out there, and they don't have, the people that are being bombarded with information, it's information overload. And it gets to the point that I think it was Alcee Fitzgerald, Alcee Simmons Fitzgerald that said one time, is the information that we're getting off the internet, it's like drinking water from a fire. I think that's what we're living through right now. It's just everywhere you turn around, you're hit with information, and some of it's conflicting. And people are overwhelmed. And when I talked about this on Tuesday, at some point you're just saying, I give up, just tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'm not researching this. Somebody in authority tell me what to do. And I think that's where we're at.
I was on a call yesterday with the Massachusetts ASC Association, and I was pretty much just listening into them. And one of the participants said she was took part in a webinar, and there was a infection preventionist speaking from a different state and saying her interpretation of what was said was that everyone has to wear an N95 mask. And so it was going like hotcakes through the Mass Association stuff. And whether that's what the professional said, or if that's what the participant heard. It's hard to say, but if you don't know, go on the reputable sites, go on the CDC, go on the FDA. They're going to help direct you at the most possible way, as opposed to reading it from, no offense, the New York Times or the Boston Globe or, Miami Herald type of things. Because
one of my tasks every day, Lori, for my boss, Emmy Weber, is to research. It's called an industry update, and I research as many of the websites, the companies, the software companies, to see what they're doing. I look at ASCA Connect, I look at ASCA Focus, I look at everything that I can, but I've actually expanded that list. And anytime there's an update, I look every day to see what date it is. So if the update says April 16th, then that's a new release. And then I pass a condensed version to Emmy, and she reports it to the C-suite. And because they're overwhelmed, there's just only so much you can take in. And so somebody's having to filter it, but it's got to be from a reputable site. If it's just, something I use information from your daily briefings, John, because I know you all have researched it.
I did want to point something out. The KN95 mask is FDA approved, but that's somewhat irrelevant. Because first of all, the FDA also stated the same thing. You need to make sure that you verify the authenticity of the mask, because apparently there's a lot of, even N95 masks, there's a lot of fake ones out there, and that there's a lot of inconsistency even among the KN95 masks. But I think the big takeaway here is, remember, this is a surgical environment, it's a sterile environment, and while we might be protecting people against the virus itself, we also have to protect against cross-contamination. Surgical infection. So, and those rules haven't changed, and that's the argument we kind of got into yesterday with the vendor, actually, who stated that that the N95 mask is so much more superior than to a surgical mask. And again, our point was that's not the relevant point here. The relevant point is that we cannot compromise on our surgical standards that we have set. So enough said. I don't want to talk about it again, but I think I will probably have to.
We need to put this one to bed.
Yeah, we do. I don't know how
it'll never go to bed.
Any question? We did have one question back there. It's a comment.
No, she was just saying that during the call in New York today, that they said that they will be enforcing the wearing of the mask in public.
I did catch part of that. The governor
did
did
you?
state that he's not
Yeah.
going to be locking people in jail for not wearing it,
Mhm.
but it would be similar to, what do they call it, like jaywalking type.
Yeah, and it was either him or the more local person was reiterating that it can be any type of, if
Yeah.
you don't have a mask, put a bandana around, put a piece of cloth. They don't want people to be stuck not being able to do anything if they can't
Right.
afford to buy a mask.
So
Yeah.
You know, like here today when I exercised, I passed with a lot of bicyclers. I never used to see these people on a bicycle, and a lot of walkers. I wasn't within 30 feet of them. Nobody had a mask on.
Yeah.
If they stop and ask us, I mean, we're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
There's some common sense that has to be used in this.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
know they had said that even if you're going out walking someplace, say you're going to a park, just have one with you in case
Yes.
you find all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
on narrow path.
That's why I have to make mine tonight. I got to make two.
Yeah.
I was going to go buy some once the governor made the orders, but then you're.
Well, good luck. You can't find them. You can't
Yeah.
even find bandanas, John.
I
I
know.
have
Etsy
gotten
is
more.
Etsy is your new friend right now.
Yeah, no,
Well,
my
Sue
sister
picks 'em up.
actually. Well, I found
Yeah.
some old masks that I'd had stuck away here forever, but my sister made some out of pillowcases, and
Yeah.
she mailed a couple to us.
Out of what?
Pillowcases, which actually.
Oh, I told you the
made
other
them
day I was
good.
thinking about doing that. And
Yeah.
I told you before the call, my bandanas came.
I love
So
it.
that's going to be my new mask when I get it made. I got 4 of them.
Don't disrespect that bandana.
No.
As long as we don't have to put up
And
with
I'm
Patriots.
patriotic. That's why I was glad my flag bandanas came in.
As long as we don't have to put up with any of those Patriots bandanas, those. Okay, that's all right.
Well, careful what you wish for. Maybe I'll wear it tomorrow.
Yeah, there we go.
Nobody cares about hockey anyways.
Oh, stop it, oh Captain Saber.
I did want to kind of give you a heads up on some of the things that are going on. First of all, we do have the New World Conference 2020 second day. There is still time to register, believe it or not. We still are getting people registering. If you do register for both days, even though the first day is already done, you'll get access almost instant, as soon as I can, to a recording of the first day. That's available now online. And you can join us live tomorrow. And I think everybody that participated in it knows how much fun we had yesterday or on Tuesday when we did this. So please.
We starting at 8 o'clock again, John?
Yep, 8 o'clock. Though speakers have to be on about 7:30. So, many centers are either not in operation at the present time or have very limited schedules. So, that's one of the things we're trying to do is provide some opportunities for continuing education for managers and employees. And that's when we announced this podcast or this virtual conference. It's a 2-day online virtual conference. It's both fun and informative. We've got great speakers, important topics, entertaining discussions, and periodic visits by a 10-week-old puppy to ensure that we make the conference.
It's got to be 11 by now.
It is 11. Actually, it said 8 in the script here.
Yeah, almost 12.
If you are a retainer client of Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, you will get a full rebate for up to 5 attendees on your June 2020 retainer bill. And so just a quick run through of the agenda for tomorrow. We're going to have some contract issues in an ASC setting with a focus on lessons that we've learned from COVID-19. That's going to be put on by Bruce Smith from Syracuse. Current Issues in Pharmacy by Victor Elves. He's a Pharmacy D, president of Octarius RX. He's a pharmacy consultant out of New England, right? Is it largely Massachusetts, though? Okay.
I believe so.
Good friend of Lori's. Disaster response process, that's going to be Alex Borneman and Jim Masters, both life safety consultants with AHS. They're going to be talking about all the lessons that we learned with a case study. I'm actually kind of embarrassed because I think they have this interactive session. They've got, pictures apparently. I'm impressed. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Hopefully the technology will hold up. Then our fourth session is by myself on governing body oversight and responsibilities of administrator in that regard. Session 5 is FLSA and personnel issues put on by Laura Spring. She's a lawyer out of Syracuse also. And then Lori's going to do a session on infection control, a heightened sense of awareness coming back from COVID-19. That will be the one session that of the 2-day conference that will have IPCH credits also. And then we're going to end at 3:15. We're going to end with a session starting at 3:15 tomorrow called The New World After the Crisis, a Leadership Opportunity. It's a panel discussion with all the speakers that we have for the day. Going to be a very enlightening conversation about where are we going from here and what does it mean for leadership? What type of leadership skills are you going to need in the future? How are leaders going to set themselves apart? So I'm very excited for this event, and I'm sure everybody will have a lot of fun. I do want to say too that Christina Benton and I, dear friend Christina, is probably the nation's leading expert on coding in an ambulatory surgery setting. She and she does a lot of billing work also. She's a primary speaker actually with ASC in many regards in this topic. She and I have been for 4 years we've been putting together a conference, and what was it, 2 days ago I emailed her and said let's forget about trying to do something in person, because right now we can't predict how that would happen, because we were targeting the spring of 2021 to do this conference. So we both agree that we're going to do a online or virtual conference, just like we did with Lori's infection control conference and with this 2-day it's a New World conference. We're going to do that. It's actually going to be a 3-day conference, we believe. We're not sure when, so stay tuned, but it's very exciting. So the purpose of this is for our business office managers, our billing people, our coding people, basically a financial focus here, and especially for people that are CAS certified. This will be a good way to get a lot of hours in. And if you're a nurse that doesn't understand anything about finance, which is unfortunately very common, it's a good course to take, especially if you're thinking about taking the CAS exam. This might be a good way to learn. One thing that we know is that because the ASCA 2020 was canceled, unfortunately, so is the CAS review course. So this particular session might be a good way to pick up at least the financial section of what we taught, or what I taught during the CAS review course. So there'll be other options available too, I'm sure, but definitely want you to think about keeping an eye on all the conferences that we're doing. We're having so much fun doing them, and let's try to get all this education in, because as soon as we open up again, I really believe we are going to be busy. I hope nobody's planning on a vacation over the summer or fall of 2020. Anybody have any last thoughts about that? Are we going to be taking vacations, anybody?
I was supposed to be in the Galapagos, remember?
That's right. Oh, my Lord.
And then yesterday, during the conference Tuesday, I got a note that the CDC was, put out a recommendation, no cruises for the next 100 days, which knocks that trip out.
I forgot. You've been planning that for years. I think
for 2 years, yeah.
2 years, yeah.
And it's all paid for.
Oh, man. Now, are you getting a refund on that?
I haven't worked on that yet. Haven't had time.
Unfortunately, a lot of those insurance policies do not cover acts of God, which I can.
Well, this is with National Geographic and Lindblad. Those of you on the call that know me know I travel a lot with them. And Sven Lindblad had sent out a note to everybody who was registered for cruises that if we could hang in there till April 30th until they could make a recommendation. I think they're going to be the ones that end up doing the cancellation. And so we'll stand a better chance. And even if they bump it back a year, that may be what we end up having to do, but it affects 10 of us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope that, especially it wasn't cheap, I'm sure. Hang on one second. We just got a email. This is from Kathy out of Syracuse. And the question was, she wasn't able to listen to the podcast, so I don't know how I'm going to answer a question. I guess she'll have to listen to the recording. But she did ask, do we know if there's been any loosening of the elective surgery restrictions? I forgot to mention the issue that we had in Buffalo. So we had a center in Buffalo that is doing retina procedures and, help me, Jenna, urology retention, basically, right? Retained urine procedures, which I don't think anybody on this panel here will disagree is not elective. I mean, it's certainly something that's very urgent. Retina procedures, you can lose your eyesight. Urine retention, of course, I believe you could get really seriously ill.
Bladder issues. Yeah.
So, but they got a letter email to them from the Department of Labor, from an inspector with the Department of Labor, asking why they were still open, asking how, asking them to justify their elective, that they were an essential service, and giving them a series of questions that had to be answered. They contacted their labor lawyer to find out what was going on, and the labor lawyer said that's very hit and miss. So again, we're talking about New York here. But they said that the labor lawyer said that they're finding people getting this letter that sometimes it seems random, sometimes it seems like somebody had complained or had issued a complaint to the Department of Labor. They don't know what the situation was here. It was pretty easy to answer that question because clearly the cases that they were performing were very urgent. I can't imagine anybody arguing differently. So they wrote a nice letter back. I looked at it before it went out, or after it went out, and agreed that that it should take care of the issue. And then they did get a response very quickly afterwards saying, thank you for the information, we'll look at it. So I think the governor in New York did state he's taking this seriously, and people that are doing procedures that are not essential are going to be held to task. So that's a bit of a warning there. So if anybody out
John,
there,
on the conference Tuesday, didn't somebody say that happened in California also? And that they weren't limiting to urgent cases. They were just open. And they were told to expect a CMS unpleasant survey.
Right. So they were warned in writing, and you're exactly right. They still kept open, and they had been told that I believe that they had been told that they were being referred to CMS for a surprise survey. So unfortunately, Kathy, and I'll ask everybody on the panel, but I have not heard about any loosening of the restrictions on elective surgery at this point.
Not in New York. I did see an article the other day, I think in some of the West Coast states who I think are a little bit ahead of us.
Yeah.
They are starting to look at.
I don't think it's California yet, though, right? It's
I think Oregon was maybe, or Washington. Don't quote me on that.
When I was on a call the other night, they have a date of May, either May 18th or 20 something. I mean, it's not anytime soon that they're gonna.
The task force meets at 6 o'clock today to talk about reopening the economy. So it'll be interesting to see if they talk about if they mention, because I know our governor in Florida has specifically mentioned surgery centers, but he hasn't mentioned a date.
Yeah, and I hear that Massachusetts is looking at it, but there's nothing definite.
I did want to remind everybody to visit the ascpodcast.com website. There is an incredible amount of information up there. There's 2 links you can go to. The best link is probably to read through the daily updates that we have on a daily basis. We do send a letter to our clients almost daily. It's not daily every day now, it's just simply because we're doing these conferences, live conferences. But do look there. There's a lot of information. There's resources that you can download. There's references to things on the internet that would be helpful. All of the latest emails, daily emails, are at the top, and then it goes down sequentially. So the further you go down the list, the less likely it's going to be current information. And then there's a resource bank there too, which isn't updated regularly. A lot of that is older stuff that's still relevant, but things really haven't changed on that. So for example, in there you can get templates for how to write up minutes of the governing body meetings where you determine what was an essential service and what was not. You can get examples of forms that you would use to justify procedures that are essential. Help me, Jenna, what other kinds of things? We got tons of information up there. Drills.
Policies. There were protocols.
Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant now. But.
The screening might be a little outdated. I'm still struggling with, different people are screening very differently. Some are maybe being too cautious, in my opinion, whereas others, it's hard in areas where it's so widespread to, you can't really screen for travel anymore. So you're probably more likely to pick it up at the grocery store than if you had been, somewhere over the weekend. Plus, most travel right now is
totally restricted.
Yeah.
I'm going to regret bringing this up, but I will just mention it. Jenna and Lori have been following the testing on site, and one of the things we know that we're probably going to have to do is before we start up again, or when we start up again, we're going to have some mechanism for testing our patients and our staff to make sure that I either already have, help me here, nurses, the immunity to the coronavirus, the antibodies, thank you, or or are not sick, with the coronavirus, and that'll require some testing.
Yeah, I have quite a few friends who work in hospitals in the surgery departments, and they, at least around here in Rochester and Buffalo, have started routinely testing preoperatively their patients.
Rapid test, right?
I think they're doing it like a couple days pre-op.
Okay.
So I think it's a little bit harder because the one girl works in Rochester, and they do some same-day surgery cases, and they do some, hospital cases. So depending on how urgently they have to do the case, sometimes they can't always do the test.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're routinely testing patients as much as they can before surgery, so that they know the status of the patient. And that also allows you to conserve PPE.
So we have been we've been following this. The standard line here is that in order to be able to do tests like that, you have to have a CLIA waiver to be able to do that specific test. As we understand it, that might be waived. Now, don't quote us yet. We're keeping a very close eye on it. We will push out on daily updates the answer to.
Well,
go for it.
We're not sure that you need to specifically add it to your CLIA waiver. There's a possibility from reading the FDA website that is, if it's approved for point of care testing in the
in other words, if it's approved,
emergency use authorization, if it's approved, but the way the FDA website reads, if it's approved for point of care testing specifically in the emergency use authorization letter, then it automatically is a CLIA waived test.
That doesn't require specific authorization on your individual.
Well, no, so that doesn't require like a special laboratory to do the test. That it could be done in a facility that has a CLIA waiver.
Got it.
It's a little bit unclear whether or not all of those under the emergency
authorization
or not the emergency authorization, but when we're under the emergency order or the emergency declaration, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for, that you might be able to just do the test prior to getting it added to your CLIA waiver specifically.
Okay. And one thing we should be warning everybody, be very careful about buying these tests. We had one of our clients went out and bought a bunch of these tests. Turns out that they were fake tests, or they weren't approved tests.
Just a little bit pregnant.
Yeah, that's right. So be very careful, make sure whatever you purchase is obviously from a legitimate source. I think that goes kind of without saying.
That's been in our newspapers here in Florida too, that they think they're doing the right thing, but they don't verify where they're coming from, and they're fake.
Yeah, it's kind of like the masks. If it's not NIOSH, then it hasn't been tested for the filtration and the efficacy. So it's a catch-22. But if you do decide that you have tests that are good and usable and whatnot, it would not hurt you just to send off a letter to wherever you had gotten your waiver approved from, just to let them know that you're adding that. And they'll either get back to you or they won't. And no news means go forward. If they don't want you to do it, they'll be apt to contact you.
And the FDA is the best source for checking to see whether or not a company is selling viable tests. Check their EUAs. That's emergency use authorizations.
I guess we should point out that I don't think we mentioned this before, but the KN95 masks are not NIOSH approved, correct?
As far,
Did we hear
for the
that?
most part, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The N95 is, but the KN95 is not. Okay.
Yes.
Another nail in the coffin of the KN95 mask. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions? Any questions on the?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, not too bad. A little bit after 4. Anybody else on the panel have any comments? Okay. I'd like to thank everybody on our panel, and let me get to that part. And that's it for this episode of the ASC Podcast with John Goehle. Join us again, and please consider becoming a patron. We have a wonderful cadre of patrons who are helping to support the efforts of this podcast. And to become a patron, go to our website at ascpodcast.com and spread the word about our podcast with your friends and colleagues, and really do us the honor of hitting the subscribe button. Our subscribers have tripled in the last 4 weeks, so clearly you're getting the message out. So continue to tell your friends about us so that everybody knows about the work of this podcast. The sound editor for this episode is Susan Cronkite. Executive producer is John Goehle. Research assistance is provided by Susan Cronkite, Jenna Alvarez, Judy D'Ambrosio, Alex Borneman, Zach Caloritis, Lori Rodricks, and Ann Geyer. Music is provided by Media Sushi and Mike Noah. The ASC Podcast with John Goehle is hosted on Podbean and is available on all major podcast channels.
This podcast is an educational and operational tool and is not intended to be a comprehensive resource for all rules, regulations, and standards that an ambulatory surgery center must meet. The advice provided should not be considered as, nor does it constitute legal advice or opinion. When reviewing specific situations involving legal and regulatory issues, attorneys and other professionals should be consulted. This has been a production of Eden Group Development. All rights are reserved. We would like to thank our sponsors, Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, Surgical Information Systems, Encompass Healthcare Data Solutions, BHG Patient Lending, and Medicus IT. For more information about our sponsors, please visit our website. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring the ASC Podcast with John Goehle, please email us at info@ascpodcast.com. We would love to hear your questions and comments. Please email us at comments@ascpodcast.com.